With this rant about neoliberalism, you know, are we throwing off these chains? Yesterday we had Mark Weisbrot on, or actually we had a colleague of Mark Weisbrot's on the program from the Center for Economic and Policy Research, CEPR.net. And he was talking about how down in Chile, the guy who won the election, and it was not by a small margin, it was more than a 10-point margin. I mean, it was a blowout election. Overwhelmingly won the presidency, is a social democrat. He is an advocate of the kind of government that you find in Norway, Sweden, basically Scandinavia, Denmark, Finland, and to a slightly lesser degree, but very much there, you know, France, Germany, Spain, Italy. And that we would like to have here in the United States. I would add Costa Rica to that list, by the way. Costa Rica, a country that literally has no military and spends that money instead on giving everybody in the country free health care and a free college education. So, you know, Chile is moving in this direction, and Chile is consequential because Chile is where the neoliberal experiment started. And this is the kind of the second half of yesterday's show that I hadn't gotten to. Neoliberalism, in 1947, a bunch of economists got together in a hotel on a mountain, Mount Pelerin, in Switzerland, and created what they called the Mont Pelerin Society, or Pelerin Society. F.A. Hayek was there, Ludwig von Mises was there, and most famously, from an American perspective, Milton Friedman of the Chicago School of Economics was there. And they invented this word, neoliberalism. The new liberalism. Now, the European use of the word liberal meant free market, right? So this is the new, like, we're going to take ideas of free market, the government shouldn't interfere in markets, we're going to put them on steroids. And that's what they did. They basically came out and promised that under neoliberalism, governments would stop protecting their own nation's economies and instead turn those over to free trade so employers could scour the world for cheap labor. That the welfare of the citizens of countries should not be taken care of by governments. It should be done by philanthropy through churches, wealthy individuals, and corporations. That unions gave working people inappropriate power over market forces that only their employers should wield, so unions would be neutered under neoliberalism. That taxes, which punish the productive class, would be cut to the point where morbidly rich billionaires would pay less than 3% income taxes, which is where we're at now in America. 3% is what Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos paid last year, or the year before last, in income taxes. While the working people who, quote, use most of the benefits of the nation's infrastructure, end quote, would, you know, therefore logically carry most of the tax load. Neoliberalism said that public benefits like primary and higher education, the electric power coming to your house, your water, your septic, your roads, airports, stadiums, even highways, should be sold off to the highest bidders and then operated along purely market principles using the magical profit motive. And even the military and intelligence services would end up as much as 50% in private hands. The more privatization, the better. Well, we're there. But they started this. The first experiment was in Chile. In 1973, on 9/11, September 11th, 1973, General Augusto Pinochet, whose senior soldiers had all been trained at the School of the Americas here in the United States, down in Fort Benning, Georgia. Augusto Pinochet rolled his tanks and his soldiers up to the presidential palace, where Salvador Allende, the socialist president, and about 30 of his close friends held the Chilean version of the White House. And after about 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, Pinochet gave a national radio address and then put a gun to his head and ended his presidency. And thus began, from 1973 to 1990, 17 years of absolute terror in Chile. And what Pinochet did is he invited Milton Friedman down, and they put into place neoliberalism. This was a coup that was set up by Henry Kissinger out of the White House on behalf of Richard Nixon, the Central Intelligence Agency, IT&T, which owned all the telephone systems of Chile at the time, and three big American copper companies, because Allende had just nationalized about half of Chile's copper and was using that money to give everybody in the country free health care and free college educations. And Nixon was like, we can't have this. So they went down and they flipped it, they privatized the pensions, they privatized their Social Security, they sold off state-owned industries, they gutted the unions, they basically did the neoliberal agenda. And this was supposed to be the experiment to prove to the world how wonderful this is. Because, next up is America. We're going to do this in 15 years with Ronald Reagan. It didn't work out so well. They killed tens of thousands of people. Pinochet was famously dropping dissidents out of helicopters over the ocean as a way of disposing of their bodies. While they were alive, he was dropping them. It's why the Proud Boys like to wear these T-shirts that say "Free Helicopter Rides for Liberals." I mean, this is this is a time that is to this day kind of celebrated by right-wingers in the United States. But what happened? Inflation went to 341%. You think 5% is bad? The GDP fell by 15%. Because of Milton Friedman's free trade policies, Chile's trade deficit exploded. Unemployment went from 3% to 10%. In some parts of the country, it was as high as 22%. So did Friedman and his neoliberal buddies say, I guess this experiment failed? No, they doubled down. Then they came to the United States and did it with Ronald Reagan. Here in 1981, we are 40 years. Next year, we will be 41 years into our neoliberal experiment. That's the bad news. The good news is that Joe Biden is the first president since Ronald Reagan took office to openly repudiate neoliberalism, to say, no, we're going to go back to the New Deal way of government. And, of course, he's getting blowback from conservatives like Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. And the entire Republican Party, of course. In Russia, Friedman's Chicago boys went in and just, took all the state-owned enterprises and turned them over to people who were buddies with Boris Yeltsin, and thus the oligarchy emerged in Russia. I was working in Russia in 1991 in Kaliningrad, or in a little town near Kaliningrad, trying to revive peasant farming because the giant, massive collective farms had failed, and there was like hunger stalking the country. In Iraq, George W. Bush threw open the country. After he invaded, he shut down all the state-run enterprises, ended taxes on corporations, ended all the laws that protected the Iraqi economy, threw it open, let any company, any foreign company come in, buy any Iraqi assets, including oil fields, and take all the wealth out of the country and not pay a damn penny on it. Neoliberalism. Here, it took a little, it moved a little slower. It took Reagan and Bush 12 years to destroy our union movement. But like I said, we are at this point now where these two forces, progressivism and neoliberalism, are on a collision course in the United States. I noticed Amazon just now has up my book. It won't be out until September of next year. I just finished writing it. In fact, I'm submitting the manuscript to the editor on next week. It's called The Hidden History of Neoliberalism. How Reagan gutted America. And so I've been living inside this topic for a while. It's pretty remarkable stuff. So do you think neoliberalism is dead and dying? I do.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We are having discussions right now that wouldn't have been imaginable just 6 years ago, during President Obama's tenure.